Oh my. Hello and welcome to episode 2. As you can see behind me, we've got a new background, and huge thanks to Tommy over at the Poker Chip Forum. We are now using the Blue Yeti 10th anniversary microphone, so I don't have to wear the headphones and the microphone there, so this is a lot easier for me to create these videos, and we fit in more hands this time than the first episode, so got a lot of fun ones for you, especially the last one, so stay tuned, and here we go. In this hand, we're playing 3-6, and there are 3 limpers to us. We're on the button with King, Queen, 9-9 double suited to the diamonds and clubs. Now this is one of those deceptively pretty hands. It looks better than it is. I'd be much happier if I had like a King, Queen, 10, Jack double suited here rather than the 9-9. The gap between the 9s and the other 2 cards is a little too large. And you know, you've got double suitedness, but you can run into situations where you make a lot of second best hands here. So I don't think this hand is a fold. This is certainly a playable hand, especially from the button. We are deep, but I don't think this is a raising spot. This field is pretty loosey-goosey, and we don't really want to bloat the pot with a hand that has to flop well. And where we've already got 3 limpers behind us, it's possible a number of our outs may already be in their hands, so that reduces some of our playability as well. But again, I think this is certainly something that we want to see a flop with, and so we're going to call, and the small blind and big blind come along as well, so we're going to go 6 ways to the flop. The flop comes down Queen 8-5 with 2 diamonds and 1 heart. So we flop top pair, second kicker, we've got the second nut flush draw, and we have a backdoor straight draw. It checks around to a solid player in the hijack, who's going to pot it for $36. Now, if it was any other player, I might be looking to raise here, although you do have to be careful. Even bad players are going to pick up good hands. So we only have the second nut flush draw, we only have 1 pair, and we only have a backdoor straight draw. I don't think we need to fold here, but with a good player leading for pot into a field of 6 players here, I think we do want to proceed with caution. We do have position on the button, so I think we can call and see what transpires on the turn. We do make the call, and the small blind cold calls as well. So now there's $144 in the pot, and the turn is the deuce of spades. So that's a relative brick. Both of our opponents check to us, and here we could bet. It's possible that our opponents are chasing, another flush draw. Someone could have, the 6-7 for a straight draw. Someone could have a 9-10 jack for a straight draw on the upper end. So there are some potential hands that we might be able to fold out. But, someone else could have, the top 2 pair with the Queen 8, or someone might have flopped a set here. I lean towards sometimes I'm going to bet here, sometimes I'm going to check. Obviously, if I bet here and I get raised, my hand isn't strong enough to withstand that type of pressure. So I opt to check here. I want to realize my equity. I don't want to get blown off of it if someone decides to, shove with some kind of combo draw here. So I'm going to check, and we'll go to the river. We have position, so we get to see what our opponents do first. The river comes the deuce of hearts, putting a pair on the board, so now we have queens and deuces with the king kicker. We're going to lose if someone has ace queen here, and this deuce doesn't really change a lot. No one raised pre-flop, so I'm not expecting to run into pocket kings or pocket aces. We have a king in our hand, so that kind of blocks that as well. And both of our opponents checking to us. I expect that I'm going to win this hand when I show it down, but I don't feel like I can bet here because I don't think there's any hands that can really call me that are behind that I can get value from. So we're going to check, and unfortunately the opponent in the small blind shows up with a jack 10 9 deuce rainbow. So on the flop, he's calling with the inside wrap to the queen high straight, but he doesn't have the flush draw, so he's kind of making a mistake there calling that pot size bet on the flop, and unfortunately he hits his dangler, the deuce on the river, to make trip deuces. We don't get to see what the solid player had. It's possible he had the ace high flush draw there, so we could have been in trouble if we hit our flush. He could have also had, some kind of 2-pair straight draw combo, the 6-7, 9-10 or something along those lines. But either way, our opponent hits his dangler and he's going to take this one down. We're in the big blind with ace-7-5-4 suited to the ace and diamonds, and the under-the-gun player, who's pretty aggressive, has straddled to $12. It folds all the way around to the small blind, who limps in, and in this spot I'm going to limp in as well. My concern here is that with everyone folding the entire field all the way down to the small blind, who just limps in, a lot of the time the middle cards and high cards are going to be flopping here just because no one else is playing, so those cards are most likely out and available. So the flop is going to weigh more towards those type of cards appearing rather than our low-oriented hand. So I don't think that we need to fold here. We definitely have a playable hand with the suited ace and definitely connectivity, but I also don't think we're strong enough to raise given that the field is folded and the deck should be favoring middle and high cards more than our hand as far as straight draws go. So we limp in, and the straddler can't help himself. He has to raise it up. He makes it $42, and the small blind's going to come along. He's going to call, and now we're getting more than 3-1 on our call. We close the action, so we're going to make the call and see a flop. So scratch everything I just said. Obviously the deck is favoring low cards as the flop comes 7-6-3 rainbow. We flop the absolute joint, the straight to the 7 here, and the small blind checks it over to us. And in this spot where the straddler raised pre-flop, his hand, or at least what he's claiming his hand is going to be more heavily weighted towards high cards, high pairs, and suited rundowns and things that are medium cards or high cards. So this flop is really going to favor the blinds over his range, and we have 7 in our hand, so we're going to be blocking the top set. We flopped the nut straight, but our hand really isn't going to improve a lot of the time here. The only way we're going to make a full house is to go runner. And so we don't have a lot of potential to improve our hand. There's no diamond on the flop, so we don't have the runner diamonds to make the flush. And it's possible that if we check here, if we don't bet our own hand, the straddler who raised pre-flop is probably going to check this behind, and then on the turn, a scare card can hit where a larger straight is possible. The 8, 9, 10 obviously is a risk that we're facing here. Or they pick up a flush draw or the board pairs, and so we could lose some action there as well. So I can't really improve here, so I'm going to bet my hand. I'm going to bet the full pot, and unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, both of our opponents fold, and we're going to take this one down. We're in the cutoff with ace, king, 10 deuce, double suited in spades and hearts, sitting on a stack of over 1,700. The field folds around to us, and in this spot I'm going to raise it up. The ace, king, 10 being Broadway cards really help. The ace and deuce are connected. They work together to make a straight as well. We're double suited now. The ace, king both being spades here hurts us a little bit. I'd rather have the king and the 10 swapped, where I have the ace, 10 of spades and the king, deuce of hearts. That's going to give me a stronger heart flush draw. In addition, when I have the ace high flush draw here with the spades, I really want my opponents to have the king high flush draw so that they can make a second best hand and I can get paid off. Still, when the field folds around to us, this hand is definitely strong enough for a raise from the cutoff, and that's what we're going to do. I raise it up to $15. Both the button and the small blind come along. We see a flop of ace 10-3 with 2 clubs and 1 spade. The small blind checks it over to us, so we flopped top 2 pair here. We also have the backdoor Broadway straight draw and the backdoor spade draw. We do not have any clubs, so we aren't drawing to that and we don't block it. Still, this board does favor our pre-flop raising range, and so I'm going to lead here for a little bit around half pot, $27 into 51, and only the button is going to call. With $105 in the pot, the turn comes the queen of spades. So now we've picked up the royal straight flush draw. In addition, we still have the 2 pair, and this card really helps us because we also have the king. So we're blocking the king jack for the nut straight, and our opponent most likely is going to be drawing to the club flush here. I don't want to let him see a free river card and get there. He could also be drawing to, a wheel draw or something as well, since the ace and the 3 are out there. But I feel like this turn card is definitely strong enough for us to continue barreling. I would be willing to play for stacks here. We've definitely picked up enough equity with the Broadway draw, the flush draw, and the full house draw. So I'm going to lead for $82. Our opponent's going to let this one go, and we're going to take it down. In this hand, on a stack of around $1,800, we are in the big blind with Ace, Jack, 10, 5 double suited. There are 4 limpers, and the action is on us. Here, I'm just going to limp along as well. I really don't want to raise this out of position and play a bloated pot out of position against other deep stacks. This hand has a lot of potential as far as straights and flushes go, and so we're going to limp along and see a flop. The flop comes down 10-6 deuce with 2 hearts and 1 club. So we have flopped top pair, top kicker. We also have backdoor clubs, we have the backdoor Broadway draw, and we have a backdoor straight draw as well. Here, the small blind is going to check to us, and against this large of a field, I'm going to lead for pot $33 here. I think our hand has enough strength that we can bet pot here. We really don't want to check and allow someone to hit a 7, 8, or 9 on the turn and make a straight on us. And so we're going to lead for pot, and no takers here, so this one will take down. In this hand, only the hijack limps in. Our effective stack size here is about $570 as we cover our opponent. We're in the big blind with a junky 8-7-4 deuce rainbow. So we really don't have any options here. We're going to check and hope to flop well. And flop well we do with Ace 5-3 with 2 hearts and 1 spade. Now we have flopped the nut straight, the wheel to the 5. Against one opponent here, I like a check just because a lot of players are going to have an ace in their hand. So when we check, it's possible we can get some action from him and he might lead with a bet, and we can go for a check raise. We do have 1 heart in our hand, so we block that flush draw. So we check it over to our opponent, who checks behind. The turn comes a 9 of spades, and I'm going to lead out for pot here, $15. I want to start building a pot because I do have the nuts. I've also picked up a gut shot to the straight to the 9, and with 2 spades out there, I only have 1 blocker. I don't want my opponent to hit a hand on the river and outdraw us for free, so I lead for 15, and our opponent does make the call. The river is the 8 of hearts, bringing in the front door flush. Now in this spot, I don't expect to be beat. Our opponent didn't bet the flop when the 2 flush cards were already there and we had checked to him, so I don't expect he's going to show up here with the heart flush very often, if at all. And at the same time, I also block the straights, so I don't think if I bet I'm going to get called by worse. But I do think if I check, my opponent might make a bet if he's missed a spade flush draw or, some other type of draw here. So I'm going to allow him to bluff and make some extra value that I wouldn't get if I bet myself. And at the same time, if for some strange reason he does have a flush or a straight and he does have me beat, I'm going to limit my losses. But I'm taking a check call line here. I don't think a check raise is really any value here because if he's bluffing, he's not going to call a check raise. And if I'm beat, I'm going to be just losing more money. So we go for the check. Our opponent does bet pot of $45, and I just don't believe him, so I do look him up. He shows up with the queen, 10 deuce, so he did pick up a spade flush draw on the turn that he whiffed, and his only way to win this pot was to try to bluff at it, and so we're able to squeeze some extra value, and we take another one down. This time around, we've only bought in for a short stack here, the minimum of 150, and in this hand, we only have about 132 left in our stack. The under the gun +1 player, who's aggressive and not very good, raises it up to $21, and we are in the cutoff with ace, queen, jack, 10, with the ace 10 of spades. In this spot, with our stack so short and with a raiser behind us, I'm going to re-raise here to isolate. I'm fine getting it in for stacks. So I re-raise pot to $72. And surprisingly, the player behind me calls the $72. And the original raiser calls the $72. So we're going to a flop with $225 in the pot. and only $60 behind. Our stack to pot ratio is almost 4-1 here, and the flop is 6-3-3 with 2 diamonds and 1 heart. So we completely whiffed this flop, and with only $60 behind, a lot of times I'm looking to get it in with any piece, but on this board, it's just not hitting our hand in any meaningful way. We could be drawing dead, and so when the original raiser checks it over to us, I've pretty much given up on this hand. I check it behind, and the player next to act also checks, so we're going to a turn. The turn comes about as good as we can hope for here with the Queen of Hearts. The original raiser checks, and with only $60 in our stack and $225 in the pot, now I'm ready to go with it, so we shove it in, and we managed to get it through, so we take down a pretty nice pot. So we've built our short $150 buy-in up to over $400, and now we're playing 7-handed. Under the gun +1, an aggressive player is going to raise it here to $21. We're next to act in middle position, and we have ace, king, king 10 with 1 suit to the ace. Now in this spot you can re-raise, and that's fine. If we do re-raise, it's going to be to a little over $70, and if our opponent's the only player who calls, then post-flop you're looking at a pot of about $150, and we have about $350 behind to play for. So we're not really creating that 1-to-1 stack to pot ratio that I really like to do with big aces and big kings here. Our hand is certainly strong enough to re-raise, but I'm also fine with just a call here as well. When we call, we're trying to draw in other players so that when we flop a big hand, we can find someone who might pay us off rather than just getting it heads up. In addition, the equities change so much post-flop that, if I re-raise here and the flop comes 6, 7, 8, well, now what do you do? So I'm fine with just calling and seeing a flop, because our opponents are going to make larger mistakes post-flop, and that's really what I want. If I'm just getting stacks in pre-flop all the time, then I'm reducing my equity, and I'm reducing the size of the mistakes that my opponents make. They're going to make much larger mistakes on an equity basis post-flop than they will pre-flop. So for that reason, I just call here. We managed to pick up one additional caller, and now there is $72 in the pot.
Bingo, bango, bongo!
And we see a gorgeous flop of King, Queen 7, the King of Hearts, and the Queen 7 of Clubs. So in this spot, we have flopped top set, the nut flush draw, and the gut shot Broadway draw. We pretty much have the world. It's nearly impossible for our opponents to have much of this board. Yet, the original raiser leads out with a pot size bet of $72. Now, if we were deeper stacked, or just in general principle, when I have a hand this strong and I flop this well, I'm going to want to just call. I don't want to push anyone out. But where our opponent is known to be aggressive and known to be bad, and he's already potted pre-flop, and now post-flop, he's betting the pot on a board that smashes us and is really going to be hard for him to have, a great draw here. But he seems to be, invested in putting money in. So I don't want to just call here in this particular instance. Usually I would in a lot of other instances, but in this instance, I don't want to just call and allow a scare card to come off on the turn that's going to slow him down. He seems like he wants to play for stacks here when he's betting the pot, and I don't want to discourage that. I have an amazing hand, so I'm going to repot here. The player behind us folds, and the original raiser repots, and we get our stacks in. And he shows up with the ace, king 7 suited to the king and diamonds. So on this flop, he's flopped top and bottom pair, and he has a backdoor Broadway draw, but that's pretty much it. His ace is missed. He doesn't have a backdoor flush draw here, and so pre-flop, if we had gotten our stacks in, he would have been a roughly 75% equity favorite over my holding. Now that we've gotten in on the flop, I am a 95% equity favorite. I just have him crushed. I block his ace, so he's going to be hard-pressed to outdraw me there. And he really needs to go runner to make quad sevens or to make a straight that, we can chop with. So I just have the world here. I've got him crushed, and fortunately, he was bad enough to play for stacks on a flop that was not that great for his hand. So we get it in, and he only decides to run it once, and we hold and win a nice spot. That's going to do it for this week. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them down below. I'd be happy to answer them. And we will see you in the next episode.